I'm coming to you today from the Red Sea because I need to make something very clear about our character in today's story. Moses did not part the Red Sea the short way in order for the Jews to escape. He cut the whole thing longwise. Moses is the discharge that separated the Red Sea and freed the Jews from the pharaohs of Atlantis. But it's not the pharaohs of Atlantis, Bob, it's the pharaohs of Egypt. Yeah, well, Atlantis was gone, and the remnants set up pharaohs in Egypt. And those pharaohs are the legacy echo of the escaped tribes of Israel. If you have spent any time in a synagogue or church of just about any variety, you have seen a lamp hanging that represents the eternal light of God, and it is supposed to be lit 24/7, 365. To make things easier, many sanctuary lamps are now electric, and by the end of this video you will understand why the current standard of an electrically lit eternal lamp is really kind of an abomination to the law set down across all time, that the light quite specifically come from an oil extracted from the olives, beaten against a rock. The Ner Tamid, as it is called in the synagogue, sits above the Ark of the Covenant and is an effigy to the eternal light of God who saved the Jews from enslavement by the Pharaohs in the Old Testament story of Exodus. The interpretation of this video refocuses the Egyptian Pharaohs to Atlantean Pharaohs because they are one and the same. The technology of the pyramids at Giza is clear enough evidence to say with total confidence that the Atlantean technology was redeployed at Giza. To finish building the bridge, we need to pull apart the word Egypt for some more context on the matter. E in Latin as a prefix means out of, and gyp, like gyr, means to go around or to rotate. The story of Atlantis says that you will find it spinning in a circle today, just as it always has. Egypt is a verb meaning out of the rotation. These were the pharaohs out of the rotation they used to call Atlantis. The pharaohs came out of Atlantis and set up a new colony in Egypt. Who were the enslavers of the Jews? The Egyptian Pharaohs, who were just the contemporary of the Atlantean Pharaoh. Just because the headquarter changed didn't mean that the identification of the enslavers did. The pharaohs were the pharaohs, and their technology of the pyramids confirms their identity. I would suggest that the Orion correlation theory gives us the best estimate of when that colony of pyramids was established. Never forget, Plato got the story from Solon in Egypt, and it came directly from the survivors of Atlantis, the descendants of the original pharaohs. Those descendants, according to Robert Sepper, were red-haired, and their DNA did not match the surrounding population, who was also not Jewish.
The tombs of ancient Egypt have yielded golden collars and ivory bracelets, but another treasure, human DNA, has proved elusive. Now, scientists have captured sweeping genomic information from Egyptian mummies. It reveals that mummies were closely related to ancient Middle Easterners, hinting that Northern Africans might have different genetic roots from the people south of the Sahara Desert.
This video is not rewriting history, as much as properly weaving together different parts of the same story. There is no DNA evidence linking the tribes of Israel and the modern populations around the Giza pyramids. There are, however, echoes of Atlantis all around us once we know what we are looking at. The story of Exodus is actually the story of the Jews released from a pre-cataclysm enslavement within a caste, or tribe system if you prefer, of Atlantis. By aligning the stories, we get a snapshot of what happened to not just the Jews, but to the people of the whole planet as the Venus apocalypse occurred. What we find at this part of the story is that it's actually the same story as being told in the Greek mythology, right? So in Greek mythology, Zeus sent his son Perseus to save Athena by decapitating Medusa. And in the Exodus, we have God sent Moses to save the tribes of Israel by parting the Red Sea. The parting of the Red Sea, red I might add, is a facet you would get with decapitation. Again, the discharge that decapitated Medusa separated the Red Sea. This is the origin of the story. Moses is a description of the event. Moses freed the tribes of Israel. In other words, the Venus apocalypse freed the tribes of Israel. Everything that happened before Moses parted the Red Sea is a story of a people about to face an apocalypse. All of these plagues make perfect sense on a planet that is heating up as the story of Exodus unfolds. The primary event begins when Moses is given a staff by God, and he threw his staff down on the earth in front of the pharaohs, and it became a snake. That snake was the current that began flowing from Venus, or Moses, to the earth, and is represented by the snakes in the headdress of the pharaohs. Moses' snake staff is also synonymous with the snakes of the hair of Medusa, another Venus avatar. This snake was responsible for the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and like Medusa, the same snake would turn Lot's wife into stone for looking back. The exchange of current to the earth caused the core to heat up as it stored the excess electrical load.
Cue the 10 plagues of Egypt. Cue the 10 plagues of Atlantis. They'll be in the end screen for you.
When Exodus says that there was no time to leaven the bread, there was no time to leaven the bread, people. It was about midnight, and the tribes of Israel had to get up and go because Moses was about to part the Red Sea, and it meant any control the pharaohs had of Atlantis would be over, and the slaves would be free. Right about now, someone is screaming, "No, Bob, the story says that the pharaoh's chariots and his army were all hurled into the Red Sea. I've seen it in the movie hundreds of times. So have I. However, the pharaoh's chariots were not drowned in the Red Sea. And in fact, on this, the story is quite specific. Quote, his elite commanders were drowned in the Sea of Suf. The deep waters covered them. They sank to the depths like a stone. There is no modern-day context for the Sea of Suf, and no scholar has deciphered what body of water is being described, because the Sea of Suf no longer exists. The Sea of Suf is the name of a pre-cataclysm sea around Atlantis, and the commanders of the pharaohs of Atlantis quite specifically die in a wave, a tsunami that spreads across the Sea of Suf. Religions the world over hold the story of Exodus as being sacred and true. It is true, the whole thing. And the story now finishes with the olives in a sack being beaten against a rock to extract the oil.
Zebediah, I need to ask a favor. We must immortalize this event so it is carried down through the ages. Take the olive and beat it against a rock that shall be the ground of our planet until you get a pure oil, like the pure energy that rushed into our earth. Do that in remembrance of the beating that occurred in the apocalypse that ended our enslavement under the pharaohs. We're going to need some protection. So what we're going to do is give credit for escaping to this character named Moses. We'll say he parted the Red Sea. And then we'll deify the light of the singularity at the center of our core. We'll tell people to worship our God who saved us, which is true, just sort of in a scientific way. Oh, here's a good idea. Once a year, I want you to symbolically take the one true light and surround it with 8 more, so it looks like the magnetosphere created by the one true light. And put a Merkaba in the middle to represent the dynamo effect of the core, and give it a braided stem like Birkeland currents. It'll be cool. People will totally get it. We're going to create this great leader that never existed, and when anybody asks if we suffered the 10 plagues, we'll say no, our God protected us. Man, we're going to look like we have God mode on all the time. It's going to be great. No one will dare mess with us. I promise. Anywho, one last thing. On the way out of town, the bosses gave me this list of things, and they'd like us to start doing them. There's just 10, not a really big deal. I think I know I'm going to sell it to the kids, but yeah, let's keep it on the hush right now. I'll put a memo out next week. All right? All right. Shalom. You looking at me?
I'm not dealing with you right now, old man.